want to keep this pretty brief, so I'm not going to dwell too long. These are weekly charts. We'll poke at the daily with the weekly levels on very briefly, but I don't want to go through and chart all the daily stuff. The markets pretty much look the same across the board, and it's really unnecessary right now to look at very low time frames for every single thing. So to begin with, we have KMD. You can see here that it's gone on a huge run up, had a very small distribution point where it kind of put in a double top and then pretty much a full retrace, about 90% down from wick top to wick bottom on this move. At the present moment, it's stalling out at 64 cents. It looked for support closer to 48. So current resistance very obvious with this previous zone here, all these wick tops. It lines up very nicely. The support bottom, you had a chance for support right here, and it seems to be where candle bodies want to rest, but we did have wicks below this, and it looks like the weekly support is going to be closer to the bottom of this previous formation with more legitimacy to it down here. So if the market continues to be weak over the next coming half a month or month, I would expect to move down toward the 48. I don't really expect this 55 kind of zone to hold. It was a nice resistance before, but here we've already shown we have more volatility. We're willing to chop through this zone very easily, and we've already wicked down to the weekly support. So that's probably where we're headed. If you look at the daily with these levels on, you can see that there's a better chance for support here on the daily than the weekly, but if this resistance continues to hold, this support probably will not. So unless we get some kind of nice trend break out of this, I don't really expect much to happen. This would be a level that I would not want to buy as a support. It's very rare that you don't want to risk reward in on a support. The counter argument is that you do have rising wick bottoms coming into this that might form some kind of ascending triangle or move up. So you can watch for this to hold, but even so, if that holds, I would be wanting to buy some kind of breakout of 65. I wouldn't necessarily be in a rush to buy something in this big of a downtrend just because it hit a daily support. I'm going to see a big weekly or monthly support before I'm interested in buying something that's retraced 90%. For the front weekly, we're trying to get support around 51, 53, somewhere in this zone. There's a wick top over here that's a little bit difficult to see. Other than that, there's not much history to go on. So this is our best guess right now, that we're putting in a weekly support here and this previous formation with wick bottom here, and this kind of price action around here seems to be a more legitimate resistance. You had, like Bitcoin, a big distribution top and then a move down. We don't see any strength yet on the weekly. On the high time frame, it's pretty much just straight down. So unless we start to see some kind of crabbing going on, or some kind of nice surge up where we take this weekly resistance, there's no reason to believe that this is going to reverse yet. You might have some fluctuation, but the bias should be more downside until we see a real sign that this is reversing. If you want to look at this on the daily with the weekly levels, you can see they're pretty close. The top of this formation over here, you have the wick bottom, and then the bounce, and then fail and retest on the underside over here. So the resistance seems pretty legitimate. Our support, on the other hand, seems kind of weak. You did have some wick tops here. You had a near enough retest over there, but that was back in January. So it's been half a year since we've had any interaction at this level. So probably what we'll be seeing is that the resistance is legitimate, but the support is probably going to find new ground for it. So on a daily time frame, you're looking at more like this little box here that's being played, very far from the weekly resistance. So unless there's some serious strength coming in, like sneaking back above this EMA and flipping this resistance, not too interested to play this on a low time frame or a high time frame. It looks pretty bad all around. KSM on the weekly, sort of the same issue. You have maybe more of a legitimate support. You've got the nice wick bottom here, previous formation over here, and a very recent wick bottom. So I think this support is more legitimate, about 157 for KSM. You have a nice resistance formation here. My only issue is this sort of gap here. We kind of went a long time without respecting this resistance. And now recently we have sort of some candle tops and a wick. But we want to see this closer on the daily to make sure that's actually legitimate. And if we shoot down to our daily, it seems to be legitimate enough. So this has some chop through in the past. But recently you get a lot of candle tops, a lot of wicks that kind of stop out in this zone. So I don't think it's a bad zone to mark right now. You could draw it a little differently if you wanted. You could come up maybe to like closer to the 240 or something. I don't really think that's necessary. I think the way it's marked on the weekly is pretty accurate so far, with the current resistance around 210 and the current weekly support being all the way down at 157. If you want to draw daily, you could put it up here about 172, but with so much wicking below it and so much support coming off of the weekly, I don't really see any reason to play the daily level on this when it's in a very ugly sort of, again, a distro top. Well, not even a distro top really. You had some distribution here and then down. So it doesn't look great. I wouldn't really want to play this as a bull unless you get some kind of breakout above this 233 to continue upward. KCS, today showing a little bullishness. It did have all these wicks coming down in this sort of triangle formation and is trying to break through that now. So it's invalidated this diagonal line that I put on just earlier today. And that's on the weekly, so that's a nice sign. Now, if you zoom out, you have kind of an old attempted breakout here. But other than that, we don't have a lot respecting this level unless you want to go all the way back to 2018. So sharing a top with a sort of previous bottom, not ideal. That's so long ago that really you just draw this line based off of the recent high more than anything. As far as the support goes, you have so much interaction with this level, so much kind of topping out in the past that I think this support is very nice as a weekly support. If this would have failed, it would be pretty catastrophic because it took so much to try and break through this before only to fail, and now to just blast through it and then use it as a support twice, I think is very good. This is one of the few coins that actually looks pretty bullish on the weekly chart as far as if you had to buy something. I don't think it looks great, but it looks a whole lot better than everything else we looked at so far in the past week. If you want to check out sort of this yellow level here, I think if you find a new sort of interim resistance area, you're looking at like the tops of this stuff that's forming now. This is a little bit scary for bulls, unless you just want to call it some kind of ascending triangle, depending on your perspective. I'm more of a horizontal player, so for me to see what's potentially a new horizontal resistance forming here doesn't look too good. But I think if we continue this momentum upward and we don't fall below this like immediately, we'll probably continue toward the top of this weekly range. It's looking pretty okay. I wouldn't play it again, but if you go down to the daily, you can see this level really showing its strength with a lot of popping out happening here. So that's more attractive on the daily. You can see why I would want to mark that on the weekly as well. I think it's getting a lot of confluence from the weekly. So to see this slow growth and then a nice impulse up on a day when most of the market is red, pretty good for KCS on the Bitcoin pair. If it can, again, if it can take this sort of 2400 line, and it looks like it wants to. My only concern here, getting a bit high on the RSI, so might have like a nice little jump up and then some bouncing around. So definitely want to see some kind of confirmation in this area to continue moving upward. But otherwise, pretty good so far. Surprisingly, very surprising. MATIC, you know, you had this huge consolidation area down here, a nice gigantic breakout, and then very surprisingly a consolidation area with no retrace at all to continue moving up. So I think now we're probably paying the price for that. We're seeing a lot of volatility. You have these huge candles really right here that just lead into a breakdown. Right now we're looking about, 105 to 110 for support. You could move this a little more recently if you want to mark this low, like right here. It doesn't really matter too much exactly where you have that. It's around 105 to 110 on the weekly support. And this is becoming important because you're coming way down on your RSI and you're closing in on this EMA at a weekly support. These are the sorts of confluences I look for to see if something's overall bearish or bullish on a high time frame. So if we were to lose this, we'd be losing the EMA, we'd be losing our midpoint on the RSI at the same time, and I would expect that to reject and continue further down. Of course, if that happens, the first place you're going to look is this block below, around 38. So that's a pretty huge dive. You probably don't really expect MATIC to fall like 70% or something, so it's of course possible that something around the bottom of these wicks that has not yet confirmed itself as a support becomes a more likely support. So you might see just some kind of wick down and then reclaim. If you're bullish, I think that's your best case scenario right now, other than of course just simply holding this range. But with the market being the way it is right now, that looks pretty unlikely with the lack of any strength on the weekly for now almost 2 months. How many weeks do we really have here? 4? Well, yeah, 6 weeks in, and the best the bulls have done is this tiny little green doji that led into more red. So unless, I mean, July's candle is very new. This is only a 5-day-old candle, so don't want to judge too harshly there. It's very possible to flip this green and hold this range. So definitely don't want to be short here at a high time frame support, but it's not something I'm interested in buying spot or longing or really playing at all, unless we see some kind of big interaction with this, regardless of whether it's up or down. I don't want to play at a support. If you want to look at this on the daily, you can see that the weekly is really holding up well. We'll take off this perspective level here so we can see more clearly. It's very obvious the interactions you're having at this level. At the weekly level, this is basically the same as the daily level. The 104 to 110, so much activity here. Unfortunately, what you're seeing on the daily is that all these wicks kind of lined up to form a resistance about 124. And after that, if you look at your candle bodies, we're getting lower and lower candle bodies after this resistance. So it's not looking good for MATIC right now. The floor is holding, but a top is also kind of just coming down. And in a downtrend, I don't expect this sort of weak price action from bulls that are just posting lower highs, lower highs, lower highs. I don't care about the lows in that case. I care about the highs getting pushed down below support. So that's what I would expect to happen right now, unless we see some kind of case that's going to show us otherwise, like some kind of big impulse move off of this support toward the middle of the range, toward something that can reclaim this EMA that we've lost and failed to break above in the past. For Link, we've lost the weekly support, or we're in the process of losing the weekly support. I know this week's candle is very fresh, but it's not looking great. Sort of the same issue where you had big resistance here, big high time frame resistance, you know, kind of through here. You're losing this zone and then just moving down. And we've seen the weekly buying pressure from a weekly level down here at 1465. Coincides with the top of this previous range. So that's a very likely high time frame support. At the same time, we've lost the range that we're in right now, or we are in the process of losing this previous top, which acted as support in the past. So to lose that, we have to look lower, and we can see from these wicks that there's a lot of buying pressure at this weekly support, 1465. So that's what I'd be looking toward. As a percentage move down, that's pretty big, looking at about 18% down. So that's not something I'd want to play risk reward as a bull on right now. We can look at the daily, excuse me. We can look at the daily and see that we are indeed just on this weekly level, very much trying to hold like 16.7. Trying to put in a new floor, maybe 18.8. The concern here is, of course, that those are daily supports, but the resistance is a weekly around the 1975. So if you're bull, you're hoping we make some kind of ascending triangle breakout, and we need that to happen like within the next day or two. It needs to either like happen today or tomorrow, pretty much. If it doesn't happen by tomorrow, or if today is like much more bearish, then that sort of ascending triangle idea goes out of the window, and you just have to play the horizontals that we have, which right now I see the inclination to be bullish on this sort of like platforming up here, but there's no reason to play that yet if the next sort of support up would be the weekly breaking. If we're just going to make higher and higher sort of daily supports, then the next step would be to take the weekly anyway, so we might as well just wait for the weekly to take before we get too bullish on this. Otherwise, all the way across the weekly is held, so we have to assume that the weekly will continue to hold until it doesn't, and if the weekly continues to hold, we're going down to here at least. So that's altcoins for today. Let's look at Bitcoin very quickly. Bitcoin, I left my very important level as black, so it's easier to see, basically the midpoint of the range. This is where people were really bullish, really posting that you're stupid if you're a bear. And this is also where I was warning against exactly what happened, where you have this fake breakout above the EMA, fake breakout above a resistance, and then you reject back below it. So far, that's exactly what's happened. We had a breakout above the EMA, directly into a resistance, and then we rejected back below it. What's even worse is we came to this level that I was saying was so important from, you know, basically this whole time I've been saying this level's important. And we rejected directly off of that. So there is a chance that you find kind of a support block here. This is a very interim level around 33.5. It's possible that this could hold on the daily, but to see this 35.5 reject after a failed breakout prevents me from being bullish. I'm still bearish on this. I think that the likelihood is much more that we head toward the 31.5 than the 35.5 at this point. Again, I've said before, but to reiterate, if we return to this level for a third time after a double bottom and attempt to break out, I don't expect this to hold for a third time, so I would look lower toward this 28.8. Now, it is possible that we actually hold this, that we grab a little bit, or that we boost up and take that. I will be bullish above this 35.5, at least going into like 40k. But as long as we are below this line, this black line, this point of control that I have marked, I am not bullish at all. There's nothing that's going to change my mind. No amount of shit posting memes, nothing is going to make me believe that I should be long until this breaks, or we put in a very clear bottom, and there's no clear bottom yet, and that level has not broken. So on the daily, still looks bad, still bearish, nothing has changed. Your return to mean is still just this downward arrow sort of thing. If I actually use an arrow, that would be useful. I mean, you're still looking at this, and if you know your reversion to mean, sometimes you're below, sometimes you're above, but ultimately you're just following this path down, and it doesn't matter if you have your ups and downs. If you stay on this trajectory, there's no reason to change your bias, and that's where we are right now. So that's what my bias is, unchanged. That's all there is for tonight. Hope this was quick and painless for you. If you have any more requests, anything you'd like to see in the next couple days, feel free to throw it in chat or send me a DM or tweet at me, and I will be sure to cover your coin, whatever pairing you want. Please specify if you want it on Bitcoin, ETH, USDT, whatever, and if there's a certain time frame you want. Other than that, thank you for coming by. That's all for now, and best wishes to you in your trades. If I had to pick something out of what we looked at today to be bullish on, it would be KCS, which looks like it's really gunning for that resistance we're talking about already. So I do want to point out, Doge in real time fucking dying. I'm looking for a spring off of this just massacre. This is a 1 hour chart, so it really just dumped hard into oversold. So I expect some kind of spring off of this. This might be all the more spring we get, but want to see how high this is going to go off that dump and then short it wherever it ends up. Same thing for Tron, massive dump, looking for a spring off of this huge volume dump into oversold, and that would be a good short setup as well. You're seeing this, it's not really unique to those, but you're seeing this across the board. There's Litecoin dumping today, and ETH also doesn't look bad really. It's holding the EMA so far, and it's holding this level, which should really be green. It is a support right now for the moment. So yeah, this 2150 or so, and the EMA, the RSI are holding for ETH. So there's your hopium for the day. If you're an altcoin, shitcoin trader, you know, ETH holding this level might be really nice for altcoins going forward. If this ends up being some kind of bottoming event across alts and ETH holds, then I think that strength in ETH would be reflected in other shitcoins. But as far as Bitcoin goes, it looks bad. As far as all the other altcoins go, on the weekly, on the daily, most of them look pretty shit right now. So be careful. Play your breakouts if you want, but I would really recommend playing confirmations at this point and not breakouts. Oh, I'm so sorry, Ovo, you caught me at the very end, but I will do the VODs. I'll put in the timestamps so you can find everything you want without having to look at everything. And of course, I know I'm a slow talker, so if you watch it on YouTube instead of Twitch, you can up that speed to like 1.25 or 1.5, whatever is closer to fluent English speaker speed, so you don't suffer. But yeah, that's all for today. I'm gonna get out of here and let you guys go. Thanks for stopping by. Thank you so much for the requests, and best of luck to you in your trades. I hope you make it big. Look out for opportunities. I think we're going to get them sooner rather than later. I think the bottom is closing in on us daily. We're getting closer and closer to a bottom here. I said probably in the next 1 to 3 months is my prediction. So 3 months would be perfect for you if you're on a 3-month holiday. If we can put a bottom in about 3 months, like my prediction was, then it'd be perfect for you. You can come back to a bull market. But I'm going to get out of here. Thanks, guys, so much, and I'll catch you next time.